People always say that you have to have money to make money, and that there's an extraordinary level of sacrifice on the road to success. So how is it that investors like us, who didn't start out with much money and who don't rely on banks and credit, how is it that we can increase our income and build our wealth in a way that doesn't require us replacing one full-time job with another while still enjoying the things in life that matter most to us? That has always been the big question, and this podcast reveals the answers. I am Carrie Like, and this is the Investor Warrior. Hey everyone. Welcome back to the Investor Warrior. And today I have with me the coolest probate attorney I have ever met, Al Nicoletti. I think that cool and probate attorney don't always go together.
Not all the time.
It's like funny funeral director. But you seriously are one of the coolest probate attorneys. And we met a few months ago. I came onto your podcast show. We've done a couple of clubhouse rooms together where we've talked about probate, and they've been a hit because probate is, and you guys, I'm on the investor side of probating, and why I wanted to bring Al on is because he is a probate lawyer. So he's on the lawyer side of things, and those two lanes are very, very different, right? And you've got to stay in your lane. And so that should be part of your power team if you're going to be going into probate with real estate investing, is you've got to have a good probate attorney on your team. And so, Al, thank you so much for coming on. This is going to be fun. We're just going to talk about probate, both from investor perspective, lawyer perspective. And you guys, this is live. So if you want to ask questions, bring them on, right? We'll answer any questions you have.
Carrie, thank you so much for having me. I love talking to you about all this probate stuff all the time. I consider you the probate queen in Florida when it comes to this real estate stuff. So I love talking about it. When you ask the questions, I'm just going to let it rip, let it roll. But, when we first connected, I saw that you were just crushing it in Orlando and that you have this podcast. And it's amazing what you're doing with it. And it's so valuable for people. And same thing with the podcast that I have. It's giving people info, right? You've got to provide value and let them hear what you can about what the business is in real estate. So anything I can do to share and provide value to your audience, I am here. Ask away. Cool.
So just an FYI, guys, Al is based out of Jacksonville, but you operate all over Florida. And things can be a little different, right, when you go out of state. So what we're going to be talking about here is probably mostly going to be geared towards Florida, but there are some probably universal things that we're going to talk about, which is every state.
We can talk about some of the basic stuff, but definitely the Florida stuff is the most fascinating, right? There's very unique laws here. It's the wild, wild west in Florida. You never know what you're going to get. I'm even learning about different things in real estate litigation. But when you get to the probate field here, Carrie, there's so much to learn. I tell people all the time, I could talk about probate to death, and I'm probably the only attorney that can do that. But I'm the only attorney probably that can liven up death. And that's very hard to do, and I just know how to do it.
No pun intended. We're going to talk this to death.
That's it. Exactly. I'm the only one that can do it. I know how to make it fun. You have to be able to do what you do well, and you're passionate about it, and you know how to sell it. And I just get the whole niche. I know where it's going. I know creative avenues to it, and I love talking about it.
Yeah. And so you guys, you probably, if you've been following me or you've been listening to the podcast, you know a little bit about my story, and that I started with probate investing or probate marketing. That was the only person I marketed to was Inherited Properties going through probate. And so I got really, really good at gathering the information, contacting the homeowners, negotiating the deal. But I also got really good about the process of probate, because there is a process that goes on there. Even though they have a probate attorney, I had to become familiar with that process because I had to know where they were at in the probate, what the next step was, where to send them to. And so the very first flip I did was from probate marketing. Some of my craziest stories, but most profitable deals have come from probate. And it's always good to have a good probate attorney. And I have found that the deals were always delayed because and I wouldn't say always, the deals were tended to be delayed because there were hiccups or delays in the probate. And I don't know, sometimes it was just the attorney not pushing things along. Sometimes different things were happening. But this is where it falls outside of my realm, right, of expertise and knowledge. And sometimes I'd have to get my attorney involved because they were already working with a probate attorney. So first off, just if you could just introduce yourself and how you got into probate and what your current model is right now.
So for everybody out there that's watching, my name's Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida. It doesn't matter if it's in Key West or Pensacola. I can go anywhere in Florida. I do unique things, obviously probate. I'll do quiet title, partitions, unique trust administration. So everybody's heard that trust avoid probate, but there's unique things where properties are titled in a trust, but they need some kind of court thing. We can always talk about that, Carrie. But when I first started, when I got into this niche, I was doing foreclosure defense work in Miami. So I graduate law school, I find whatever job I can, a former mentor of mine, former friends, and I said, hey, I really want to learn, I really want to work, get hands-on. So I did, and I started doing foreclosure defense. It was kind of near the end of the '08 era, so there was all that case law out there. There wasn't really much to do left except loan modifications and cash for keys mediations. And a best friend of mine from law school came down to Miami one day, and he had been doing probate in Orlando for a while, working at a firm just as a clerk for the time being. And we got into this discussion when we were hanging out, and he came to visit me in Miami. And he was like, have you ever thought about how many properties are just sitting out there that are still titled in the deceased name or just a name, and titles never transferred to the true heirs? And at the time, I never thought anything of it. I didn't know how to apply what that really meant. And so I think another year went by, and he came back down, and I'm just that type. It took me a while to realize what that was before it took off. And he said the same thing, and we were looking at it together, and I thought, oh my gosh, there is so much opportunity here in the probate market because you have pre-foreclosures, right? They forgot to pay, they can't pay, they're dead. You have tax delinquencies. They forgot to pay, they can't pay, they're dead. And you have all these leads out there that may not have ever been done or touched it. Nobody has gone after them. So I was starting to get into a role down in Miami about talking to realtors, talking to some investors. The only thing in Miami is that every 5 minutes there's a new shiny object. So not a lot of people were really sticking to probate and understanding, because I was just talking the language. I was speaking probate constantly. And I had a very, very few people down there that I networked with that said, man, Al, you've been saying this for 3 years. You've been talking about this silver tsunami, this up and coming niche of probate real estate, not just bank accounts, but the real estate side, right? And we'll dive into that too, Carrie, about open probates and pre-probates, because there's a difference, right? There's, when you go to the courthouse, they're all open. But it was at that time, I was like, I really like this niche. I think there's a ton of opportunity, and a job opportunity up here in Jacksonville landed in my lap because of my best friend was working up here. And he said, Al, if you did what you're doing in Miami and you did it in Jacksonville, you'd crush it. And I'm like, yeah, because nobody's really paying attention. Well, I took the job. I started, networking. I started getting involved in the community, talking to investors, talking to realtors, and still nothing really at that time still stuck. And so I was still preaching the message. I never gave up on what the opportunity was with probate real estate. And I realized that I need to start speaking. I need to start teaching. I need to start doing presentations. I need to get out there and explain that. Hold on a second. This whole thing about everybody hearing it takes 9 to 12 months doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
There's a way to structure it differently where we can wait for attorney's fees at the closing, cost up front preferably. We need those costs for sure. But it's all about setting a message. And so as soon as I started doing that up here, it was crazy. People couldn't believe it, number one. And, as an attorney, you have to play multiple roles, right? You have to play marketer, you have to play attorney, getting results, right? You can market all you want, but you got to show the results. You got to step up to the plate and do it. And I did. First couple, I explained it to some a realtor, investor. They bought into it. They figured it out. And when I was getting these probates done in 2 to 4 days in Duval County, or 1 week in Hillsborough and 3 weeks in another county, it was killing the other timings that people have been through and blowing people out of the water. And that's when it really started hitting. When I was speaking, I was networking. And now, as you know, I mean, look, Carrie, you're in Orlando. I'm in Jacksonville. The pandemic changed everything. I don't have to be in Orlando for us to do this thing. I can be in Jacksonville Beach. It doesn't matter. But that was the catalyst to doing this, is figuring out that there's all of this real estate you have in Orlando, or not even just Orlando, but Florida. And it still could be titled in a way that you can't get title insurance if you're buying that property. So what do? And now you need me to get in there, figure out what we have to do, because as we'll talk about, probate real estate is just another real estate transaction with a puzzle. And with everybody getting involved in on that puzzle, and we can figure it out, that deal can close. So that's how it all started for me. And you know I'm passionate about this. I teach on this stuff all the time. And that's why I can keep going on about this.
Yeah, you guys at the end will make sure that you have all the information to contact Al, because he's got some great shows. He's got a YouTube channel, the podcast that you're going to be launching. And you're going to be talking more. I mean, you talk not only about probate, but title issues. And you know, I think that probate has always been this like thing that some people tend to steer away from because they think that it's complicated, and it doesn't have to be complicated, right? And then they also think that it can take some time, and it also doesn't have to take as much time. And I remember the first time you and I talking about probate, I'm like, yeah, you know, sometimes I've got to put it under contract, and then I just got to expect that it's going to extend because the probate's going to take like 60, 90 days. And you were like, what? You're like, no. And while it can, because you do sometimes have like siblings fighting, or there's arguments, or there's funky things going on, which is going to happen in any part of our real estate world, because as an investor, I'm not dealing with traditional sellers and traditional transactions, right? We're typically dealing with about 10% of the market who needs to sell for a certain reason, right? There might be some kind of a distress situation, or it's a vacant house, or it's a probate, or there's some kind of something going on. And when one thing is going on, it tends to lead to other things that we uncover when we go through title, right? So there's always surprises in our world. I don't know that we've had a lot of transactions that from start to finish went like just no hiccups whatsoever. I mean, there have been a few, but just the nature of our industry that we're in. But it helps when we have people like you who are on that other side of things, where you're on the law side, and you can move things along, because we have found that with a lot of our probate transactions, it's like, well, I haven't spoken to my attorney in a few weeks, and I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, why is this taking so long? Or we found out later on that, did the property really need to be probated? Couldn't we have taken it out of probate and sold it outside of probate? Right. And so it's so important to have someone who like just gets in there and just like speeds it up, because a lot of times when, and from our side of things, that seller is motivated to sell that house because there are debts that need to get paid in the estate. There are other heirs where that cash is going to get dispersed. The probate attorney needs to be paid out of the proceeds of that sale. They don't want the liability of the vacant house. They might be paying the mortgage, paying the utilities, keeping up with the house. And if this is a house that's not near them or that is out of state, well, then they get really motivated to get this done. But sometimes it's like, we're doing everything we can to get it moved on. We're good with we're good with our end. We've got our money lined up. We've got our contractors lined up, but it's like this other side is holding us up, and it can get really frustrating.
Yeah, so many points to touch on in what you said. I had somebody visit me actually from Miami the other day. They've seen me on Facebook doing all these videos. I mean, all the new stuff too. And they said, what's interesting about you, Al, is you don't just think about the probate. You think about the entire situation. And I thought about that for a second. I said, that's so true, because I keep being involved in these deals where I can't get paid until the end. And what that means is if we can't figure out the beginning or the middle, there is no end. So we really need to be so proactive in what's happening. I couldn't tell you so many times, Carrie. I just had one I did a month ago where everybody was so focused about the probate, and we could talk about timing and why that's so efficient. I think about being very efficient, which is why I make it simple. I want to make it as easy as possible. But we had so many situations like this last one where they're so focused on the probate being done. And I get it. It's because of all the bad stuff that used to happen before that they thought probate took so long. So they're like, we're not even going to worry about the survey. We're not even going to worry about the appraisal. We're going to focus on the probate. But when, I'm involved and I get that probate done in a week and then title is updated only to find out that they need a death certificate from some lady like 30 years ago, and the only way you can get it is something in Pennsylvania, it's like, it's not about the probate anymore. It's about this whole puzzle. And that's where the title company, it's a team effort to figure out what is happening. Otherwise, it won't get closed. And another example is I had a total wackadoodle one in Miami last year where mom died. You'll love this. Mom died. And the question I learned after doing like 100 probates last year was, how many kids ever were they? Because if you have several that die before, you have to look straight down their line. So I had this one, mom dies, 7 kids of all time, 2 die before mom. So then you have to look down the line. 1 had 2 and the other had 3. So of those, you had 5 kids or 5 grandchildren. And then on the other side, you had 5 true kids of mom. Well, of the 5, 1 was incompetent and then the other was in prison. And so I knew from a prior transaction, you have to learn from these, that if they're incompetent or they're in prison, how are they going to sign those documents? Where's the power of attorneys? Oh, and by the way, it can't just be a copy of a power of attorney. It needs to be an original power.
Original, yeah.
You have to have these facts to be proactive. And when you have that up front, it's not a time waster, right? Because we know exactly what's going to happen. And because I thought through the whole thing from the beginning, I said, you need to send those POAs to the title underwriter right now. I'm not doing anything until we see it. And it authorized the real estate and it authorized the transaction for the probate. But we had all of it when we filed the probate, 8 days to the court orders, done. That's Miami.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. We've had some crazy things happen too, where there was this one house where we went under contract with them. He was doing his own probate because it was a summary administrative case. And we can go into the differences between summary and formal, because that is really important when you go under contract to know what kind of case this is, because it might affect the timing. How many heirs are there? What kind of circumstances are there? But with this case, there was 8 heirs and it was going to have to be probated. He was doing the probate. The court told him it was going to take a few weeks just to get everything filed. And during that process, they went to go contact one of the heirs and they couldn't get a hold of him. And they went over to his house and they found out that he had passed away. And so now it was like, okay, now we got to probate his part. And then now 7 heirs had to sign this purchase and sale agreement. And the purchase price was only like $40,000. we had to like disperse all of the different, to all of the different heirs. So yeah, you do run into these, and time, right? When it comes to timing, the more delayed we get into that contract, into the purchasing of that property, more things can happen. Right? More funky stuff can happen along the way, where now an heir is like, I don't know, I'm not on board anymore. Or like timing sometimes isn't our friend when it comes to closing a probate transaction, or an heir passes away if there's other heirs, or one heir just goes missing, right? Right. So let's talk about like timing. First off, let's talk about the difference between, I think the two main cases is formal and summary, and what the difference is between the two, and what we have to keep in mind as investors going into putting a house under contract with someone who's going through probate.
So there are 2 types, right? So you have a summary administration where the value of the assets as a whole of the estate is under $75,000. And what's unique in Florida is In Florida, there's homestead law, right? So the property could be $1 million. It could be $10 million. And that's where that person lived. That's where they resided, intended to make it their primary residence. It's counted as zero. So even if it's 10 million and it meets the requirements of homestead, all of that stuff, but it's counted as zero, an exempt asset, meaning that that $10 million house could still go through a summary administration because it's under 75. And what that means is you don't have to do so much of this extra paperwork all the time. Like in a formal, we'll talk about that sometimes there has to be an accounting, an inventory, all these other affidavits, publishing the newspaper, all of that. But if you have it where it's just a homestead, and we always ask the heirs about creditors, right? That's a whole other thing. It's always, do you know anybody? Are you getting bills? Are there any creditors that need to be notified of it to try to say it wasn't homestead? And if there are, we serve them. But you make it that simple. And in that situation, if it's that simple, it could be a $100,000 house. It doesn't have to be 10 million, Carrie. But if it's 100,000, and let's just say there's no surviving spouse, always ask if there's a will, an original will. But let's just say none of those, no spouse, and there's just 4 kids. The best part about a summary, and this is why I think ahead, not just on the probate end, but on the title end, if you can make it so simple where let's just say all 4 are on board. And why have to go through this long personal representative thing when an underwriter in title insurance would allow an order of summary administration and be treated as a deed, meaning once that order is entered, all 4 are on title and you can just get deeds and everybody to sign it. That's called making it efficient and simple. So summary administrations, I prefer all day because if we can make it that simple, great. And then you have actually 2 more. You have formal administrations and then ancillary administration, something I've been picking up more. I picked up like 4 of them in the last 2 months. It was crazy. But a formal administration is, so the value of the estate is over 75,000, okay? And then, so with summaries, you can still do a summary even if it's over 75, the date of death is more than 2 years. But in formal, the assets are over 75,000, and what you're dealing with now are like bank accounts, secondary property, land, because at that time you need, or the underwriter, right? It's not even up to us. The title insurance needs somebody of authority to sign the closing documents, to sign the contract for you, and be authorized, of course, if you can get the consents from the beneficiaries too, to then sign the documents. So all the heirs can't just sign on secondary third homes. There has to be authority. So you have to go through this longer process of appointing somebody, getting the approval, and what's really interesting about timing, right? So even if you have a formal administration and you do have to do the newspaper over 75,000, there could be a way where if you're like, Al, this has got to get closed, this is a hot contract, it's got to get done. There could be a way where there's a motion filed to approve the sale, asking the court to say, look, we have a ready, willing, and able buyer. It benefits the estate. It's not going to waste anything. It's got to get through. Otherwise, it could go to tax deed. It's going to go to a foreclosure, whatever it is. There could be a way it's authorized, so the court signs it. It's just that the money from the sale has to be held in either a trust account or an escrow account or an estate account for 3 months. So look at that. It's called thinking ahead and efficient about getting it moved over, the transaction's done, the money's held later. It's thinking through the whole scenario, and that's a useful way to do it. Then you have ancillary administrations, and I've really shaken the tree on this one lately too. So an ancillary administration is the deceased resided out of the state of Florida, just for purposes of Florida. They resided in New York. They resided in Texas. That's where they lived and resided. But they owned property here in Florida. Well, what do? Do you have to do like a probate there? You have to do a probate here? And I've had several scenarios recently where we figured out you don't technically have to have the probate out of state to get the probate done here as long as nothing is happening in the primary state. So it's called happening here in Florida, same procedures. It can be a summary, it can be a formal, but at the end of the day, it's about finding those creative solutions to moving the property over, benefiting the estate because they're going to get their money, and seeing how that property can get sold. There's so many things to talk about too.
You know what's crazy? Do you know how many houses we have bought where it was their primary and it went through formal? Is that
That's unbelievable? Why?
I actually didn't realize that as long as it was their primary, you could do a summary. Didn't even, and that there's no cap on what the value of the house is. It doesn't matter if it's a $10 million house or a $100,000 house, as long as it's their primary.
You got it. It doesn't matter because it's a primary residence. You'd be so surprised, Carrie, because you have. What I didn't know last year, and I'll tell you, 2020 taught us a lot of stuff. I'm sure we can talk about that. But 2020 taught me that we didn't have to do personal representatives deeds anymore. In fact, title insurance companies don't even like personal representative deeds. And that's when you have that personal representative, the executor, the administratrix, whatever it is in that county, state, wherever, that is authorized to sign a deed over. And in fact, in Florida, they're not without a court order. But I always thought, in order to get that land moved over without a sale, no sale, to get it moved over, you need a PR deed. In fact, title insurance approves orders of summary administration. So if I told you that mom dies, 4 kids, no spouse, no will, and they all are on board and they all will sign deeds, wouldn't you rather just have a simple summary go through? It's homestead property, get it through, done. I prefer that all day.
Right. And let's talk about kind of the average timing. So what's the average timing for summary versus formal versus ancillary? And I know it can change when you have kind of wacky situations come about, but let's just talk about average.
Okay. So all results are different.
Right. We're not going to hold you to this.
Everybody's like, we're going to Hernando. So I'll tell you my fastest one, which was Hernando. But the thing is, how have I done it? So Hillsborough, I could do it in a week. I've done Hillsborough County in 2 weeks. Lee County, which is the Fort Myers area, I had an ancillary administration. I think it was 20 days. And that was the court accepting mail orders through FedEx too, which is like, wow, they were still doing that. Duval County, even if it's a looming tax deed in 2 days, you can get that done in a day. I mean, you just let them know the urgency about it. But you're talking about Clay County 1 day. I've done things in Duval County for summary administrations in a week. It varies with the creditors too, because what you want to do is you have to always ask, are there any known or ascertainable creditors? Serve them. But again, like before, there could be a way where the order's authorized, it's just that the money's held. But you're talking about summaries that could be fast. 1 week, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, even it could be 5 days. Doesn't that sound a lot better than 4 months, 7 months, a year? So that's summary. Formals are not too far off either. I have one right now. So the title company had an issue. All of a sudden, last minute, I think it was the husband and another person were on title. It had that joint tenants with the right of survivorship, so the survival of the fittest. It moved over to the husband. Husband dies. And that was crazy too. So when that happened, title said, "Al, there's a closing in March, middle of March. We got to get this done." Well, she calls. I sit her down. I said, "This is what we got to do. There's things in this will that have to be taken care of. But I need this. I need this. I need this. I need this. I need this." And we got everything. And this morning, with filing it last week, I sent all the court orders out because if we can get her appointed and the property authorized to sell, that's it. Get that property through and we'll do the newspaper publication. So it's not too far off from summaries. If I had to say it, maybe 2 weeks, 4 weeks to just get that order authorizing sale. Smaller counties can be a little different. I have one that's just like a little different, takes like 2 to 3 weeks for even a response. But nothing it's not me. And I would always follow up. I'd be like, "Carrie, let me tell you, this is crazy right now. I can't help it. Let's set it for hearing." Ancillaries. So I had one, and I learned about this with my business. I will always take business from here on out, forever and ever, on vacations, holidays, and weekends. And the reason I say that is because November, I'm taking my vacation. It was very slow last year, and I'm going to make sure I'm going to use Thanksgiving to the fullest, because this past December, I picked up 7 probates between December 23rd and January 5th. Okay. And the reason I got half of those is because I'm different, Carrie. I am an attorney that actually picks up the phone. I respond to people. I call you back. We figure it out. Let's get it together. And half of them only hired me because I was the only attorney that called them back on a vacation and a holiday. And one of them was unique. So I think it was mom and brother were both on title. And mom died. No, mom was on title. And then when she died, she had 2 kids. And because the son died after mom, that counted as a second probate, right? We would have avoided it if he would have died before mom. But because he died after mom, it was a second probate. So mom's probate wasn't hard. It was just a daughter and sibling son, but he's dead. Then we had to do his. Well, he resided in New York. Right. So when he died, he was there. He had nothing to do with this property. It wasn't even anything. Date of death was more than 2 years, so we didn't even have to worry about any creditors whatsoever, meaning it can go a lot faster too. You don't have to worry about serving. You can't get rid of Uncle Sam mortgages and all that, but Visa, MasterCard, Home Depot are out. So more than 2 years, I was able to figure out that he never had anything in New York, so we can do a proceeding here, an ancillary summary here, to just address the interest that he had here. And I think we did that in 5 days. And even the title company was like, I can't, how did you even do an ancillary? Because they thought you have to do one out of state. But if there's no assets there and none has ever been done, or it's already done, you got to figure out the creative side to everything.
Yeah. This is such great information. And, you know, why are we talking about this, right? Why are we talking about the law side of probate? Well, because it's important when we go to speak to sellers who contact us through marketing. Now, I'm marketing to people who are actively going through probate because I pull my information directly from the court system. So if they're in the court system, that means that they have filed their petition for administration, and now they're actively going through it. And so a lot of times they'll contact me while they're going through probate. And sometimes I've got to ask some questions, right, to them. I need to figure out where they're at so I can put together an offer. Sometimes I don't even know if I can put an offer under a purchase and sale agreement under contract with them, right? So that's number one. Number two, you do act as an advocate sometimes. Now, I'm never going to give law advice because I'm not a licensed lawyer, but I can let them know based on my experience, here's where you might be. Contact your attorney and ask these questions, like see where you're at, see what he's doing. Like, this is usually the next step. Has that been done yet? Or is there something going on that he's doing, right? So you sometimes just become an advocate on like guiding them to who they need to go to or the questions that they need to ask their attorney. And then you become a credible source for them. You build that trust with them. And so it is really important to know the probate process. And I don't need to go into like statutes and laws and know it inside out, right? That's not my lane. But I do need to have some kind of concept about what they're going through, because it is going to affect what I'm going to do with it. So if you could, Al, like, what are some of the questions? Let's give like a hypothetical situation, because this has happened to me in the past where someone has contacted me, a loved one has passed away, they know there's a will, right? So they're like, oh, there's a will, it shouldn't be a problem. We want to sell the house because there's a will in place. I'm the only heir and they've named me. I'd like to receive an offer for this house. And they, they haven't even, it doesn't sound like they've even contacted a probate attorney. It's just that the person passed away and they want to sell this house as fast as possible. And they know that they've been named as heir in a will. What kind of questions would us investors, being the first person that this heir has reached out to, what would you say are some really effective questions for us to ask that heir that would then help us get to where they're at and maybe guide them over to you?
Well, the first thing I would say, have you called Al Nicoletti? All right, we haven't even gotten there yet.
Well, no, and the reason I bring this up, I just want to backtrack, is because a lot of times they'll say, oh, there's a will, so I don't think we need to do a probate.
And I get that all the time, Carrie. I had one in Central Florida last year where they thought there was that will, and even in the will it said that personal representative was authorized to sell the real estate without court order. And I'll back up. So first things first, is it an original ink will? Because if there's a will and it's a copy, it's presumed that there was none or it was revoked and torn and whatever. So you have to prove that there was one, and it is a tough burden, right? So number one is it an original will? Number two is, does it have the right signature requirements? Now, I'm not expecting you to all know that. I do videos on this too, Carrie. You don't have to know all these terminologies. And I love that you said that too, because the more I talk to investors like you and investors all over Florida, title companies, it changes my perspective on how I speak as a lawyer. I never want to sound like a lawyer. The more I practice, I want to sound less like a lawyer. So I want to explain it in a way that, look, there are these things you have to be aware of, and just get to a point just enough to say, okay, we know somebody that can help figure this out on the puzzle end, and you got to get in touch with him. But signature requirements are something that's an overthought when it comes to wills. Believe it or not, you have to have two disinterested witnesses that are not inheriting from that probate. And it has to be another page called the self-proving affidavit, where everybody's looking at each other with the notary saying they all signed in the presence. You have to have these certain things. Otherwise, it could be a disaster. I could tell you stories about the two notebook paper ones that we have where it was on one sheet, barely witnessed, barely notarized, barely a signature, and we have to get oaths of witnesses, and it's a mess. It's basically there is no guarantee this is going to happen. But if it goes through, there's something really good here.
Right.
So original wills are huge. The next thing I would really find out is, what does it say, and explaining to them. Wills do not avoid probate. The only thing wills do are help the court and guide them where the probate's shifting, who the beneficiary is, or are they? Maybe it's a trust. I've had that too, but it was a copy and they have to deal with it now. But if you look at the beneficiary, it could be a trust, meaning where's the trust and who's getting it, or it's going to several people. And the other thing that they think about from time to time is, I'm the executor, I'm the PR, I can do everything. You can't do anything until you can. And that means the judge is appointing you as a personal representative. And fun fact, you don't always need a personal representative in a probate estate in Florida. It's probably used 35% of the time because of secondary, third, banks need it for getting money out of accounts, like large amounts of money. But you don't always need it. So the fact that it even says that there doesn't mean necessarily they are. So you are not until you are. That's a good one right there. But the next thing is, we need to look at it, right? So analyzing what clauses are important. Is there a homestead thing that says they get the homestead in there? Is it a rest, residue, and remainder clause, meaning anything and everything? It could be real estate, personal bank accounts, all go to everybody. And if it's homestead property, and it's not going to a friend, and it's not going to somebody outside the blood lineage line, it can just be homestead property going to all of them. And that's when you're starting to think, okay, homestead property. I know Al talked about this, because if it's homestead, you need all heirs on contract, because all heirs, preferably, you really want it to sign the probate documents, even though formal notice could be possible. And they need to sign deeds at closing, the most important part. So up front, when you see that will, you need to be thinking A, B, C, and D. So you're only talking to A. Well, where's B, C, and D? And is this mom's primary residence? Did she live here and did she reside here? Okay, That is very important to know. It gets to a certain point then when, sure, I can analyze it, we can look it over, but a very important key is title insurance. You said it earlier. The idea is, if there doesn't even have to be one, fantastic. I would rather you see it for yourself on a title commitment that a proper probate proceeding is required in Florida, other than us guessing that there needs to be probate. And I have that from time to time. They'll say, how do you know? Well, here it is. Here's the title commitment that says you need to do probate. In fact, for an investor perspective, you'll love this. It's a super sell for you, Carrie, because if you come across an heir that says, I don't have to do this, we don't have to do anything, and you say, look, I'm going to show you we have to. And you know how you prove it? Title insurance. We'll grab a title commitment from Old Republic. So then you show it to them and they say, I still don't think we have to do anything here. Okay, fine. We'll grab it from Chicago Title Insurance. And then title insurance is saying probate and probate. So we have to do this, otherwise it can't sell. And the benefit of you doing it, Carrie, is I know how much you care, and you have your amazing strategies behind the probate niche. And you're basically like, look, I'm here for you. Other people, they may not be doing the same thing. We can walk you through this, right? And so you don't have to know everything about this. It's just thinking through homestead, all beneficiaries. What type of land is this? Is it vacant land? Is it a primary? You even get creative. I can go on about this. There was a probate last year where there was a house and there was land. And we thought, oh, that's, one is homestead and then the other is non-homestead. Well, we figured out that under Florida homestead, you can group both properties and consider it homestead property. And now that can be grouped and gone and done with the homestead order. So it's just asking enough. And of course, it's watching Al Nicoletti's YouTube channel and videos about, and I do a webinar every second Wednesday of the month at like 7 p.m. on a different topic. But I just see so many of these things. I have everybody can see it online on YouTube, where I talk about probate secrets and getting around creative things. Yeah. So there's so much to talk about with that, Carrie.
Yeah. And like I said, again, you don't have to know everything, right? Because I'm not a licensed lawyer. I'm not going to give them law advice, but I do need to know, can I put this under contract with them? Who's going to be on the contract, the purchase and sale agreement? Who needs to be added on there? Is it the heirs? Is it the personal representative? What's the time frame for this, right? So I have to have a general idea of what to ask and where they're at, so I can construct my offer and get this down on paper, and then have an expectation moving forward of what we're going to be doing here. So again, like you said, Al, we don't need to know it all as investors, but the more we know, the more effective we can be at doing what we need to do, which is buying the house from the person. So my next question is, at what point can I put the house under contract with someone? If they call me and they say, hey, my mom just passed away, she left me this house, I'm the heir, there's a will, I'd like to go ahead and sell the house. At what point can the buyer put the house under contract with the seller?
There's a couple schools of thought on it, but at the end of the day, considering that it was homestead of mom, 4 kids, there's nothing really preventing you from getting all 4 to sign it beforehand, because under homestead theory, when she passed or mom passed, title in the world of homestead immediately went to all 4. So there's nothing really preventing you from doing that. Enforceability and everything's a different little story, just because once the homestead order's in, now they're really on title, now they're on the contract, and it almost like retroactively applies. So to answer it, there's nothing stopping you from doing it in the beginning before things have gone. I just get that question about enforceability all the time. Like, I don't, it's questionable. But same thing with like land and secondary homes, right? I mean, if you know who the potential PR would be, there's nothing stopping you from getting them to sign. However, I think there was case law out there that it's still not enforceable, but once they're appointed as PR and they're nominated, they're binding, so it can retroactively apply. So again, I see it all the time. I see people lock up that stuff, they lock up the contracts, and they do it before any probate's done, which again, at the end of the day, they're all gonna have to agree anyway at some point, because they're all gonna have to get to closing. So they're all gonna have to sign deeds later.
Right. Okay, great. You guys too, you can ask questions while you're on the live stream. Again, this will be going up on the podcast and it will be available after, because this is so much good information that you might want to go back through it and take some notes. And again, Al has all kinds of educational videos that you can go to. You said you do the webinars once a week.
So I do the webinars on different topics every second Wednesday of the month on my Al Nicoletti business page. Maybe because of the way Facebook's been with some videos, I may just also start going live on the YouTube channel, Twitch. I don't know. We'll see about that. But yeah, I do it every second Wednesday. I may start doing even a new segment about stories, and I'll do that maybe like on the fourth week on that Wednesday of every month to talk about unique things that come up, nightmares, successes. I just talk about this stuff because every day is a new hypothetical. Like I'm about to take one on where these heirs tried to shove a probate through. They only found out there was a copy of a will, but now we know there's an original will, and that changes the whole story, and we're going to stop the whole thing. We're going to get involved. I can't wait for this. We're going to get our notice of appearance ready, but we're going to stop the whole thing in order to find out that there is an original. The mom transferred it, or she conveyed it really to somebody else outside the family. And then of that one, she also died and there's kids of her. So you have a double probate situation. But yeah, it is. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I just think that from what I used to hear, investors would shy away from it, right? Mm-hmm. You can be efficient and try to find out as much as you can. Just asking the questions, writing down as much as you can, and getting all the answers that you can.
And like I said, you guys, the deals that I've done that have gone through probate have always been my most profitable deals. And it's because when people are contacting you and they're going through probate, it can be a very difficult situation. It's a very emotional situation. I have already told my parents, do not name me the personal representative of your will. Give that to like my younger brother, because it's a lot of responsibility. And then when you have multiple heirs and siblings that are not getting along, it can be really taxing on the personal representative and the heirs. And a lot of times they just want to sell the property and they just want to just go on to the next phase of their life, right? And so that's number one. Number two, a lot of times they're taking care of the house. They're paying for utilities. There's a mortgage that might be in place. They've got lawn maintenance or pool maintenance. And that can be difficult too, especially if they don't live near the property. Plus it can be a liability for them to have a vacant property, right? That's number two. Number three, a lot of times these houses, if it was their mom or their dad, are not renovated. They need a complete remodel. Sometimes it got to the point where their mom or their dad just didn't take care of it. So there's just a lot of TLC, deferred maintenance, that needs to happen. And so for them to put it up on the retail market, a lot of times they can't sell it to a retail buyer because electric panels have got to get replaced, roof has got to get replaced. There's wood rot everywhere. The first flip that we did was like this 3-tiered house, or 3-story house. It had a basement and it was a wood frame home. And like the outside was just like, there was like birds living in like all these different spots of the house. They kind of just nestled inside and like made some nests. I mean, holes everywhere. And it was because he just, during the later end of his life, he did not want to move from that house, but the house started to fall apart because he just couldn't keep up with it. And so we come into a lot of these situations where it's just kind of this perfect storm of events. And the seller can be very, very motivated to sell that house. And then when you can become knowledgeable about the probate process, you can become knowledgeable about what they might be going through. I mean, I've had lots of conversations where I was a shoulder to cry on because it did get a little bit emotionally involved with what they were dealing with, not only the passing of their loved one, but now they've got to go through this process and deal with some heirs and maybe some things going on there. And so you can be that source that they come to just who might need to just vent to them. Sometimes you play psychologist a little bit, but you're also that trustworthy source that can guide them in the right directions. hopefully over to Al if they need to do the probate, and that you can be that buyer who's going to be there to buy that house for the agreed upon price when probate is done, and then they can move on. So it can be a very rewarding experience. A lot of the people that I have worked with who were probate sellers, we kept in contact with after we showed them pictures of their mom or their dad's house all fixed up, which they loved and they were appreciative of. But also they have been my most profitable deals. And it's just because a lot of times the house just needs a lot of work, right? And we can get it at a price where we can force that appreciation by putting in the improvements, where the sellers and the heirs, they just don't want to spend time and money putting those improvements in.
Yeah, and you have so many situations like that with distressed properties. And at the end of the day, many of these heirs, what you find out is they moved on from the property, right? They got jobs, they moved out of state, this property's just sitting here, and they need somebody to come along and say, look, I don't want to deal with it, I don't want to pay the taxes anymore, but I also don't want to lose it at the tax deed sale or the foreclosure. Am I liable? Am I responsible? You know, and those leads are all calls to action to say, hey, you got to do something here. But for sure, you have so many situations, though. You wouldn't believe, Carrie, how many properties are still sitting out there in all of Florida where titles never changed, the heirs have been paying the taxes or they're not paying the taxes, and they're going through so many things. And if you can be there for them, like I had a call yesterday and you can just tell they were super stressed about what's going on. There may be a will, it may be a copy, but nonetheless, they've been going through it for about a year. It was almost a guardianship situation, and you can just tell the frustration. And all I thought was, look, let's sit down, let's look at everything. Otherwise, you need to make a full evaluation of what's happening. Otherwise, we can't get to the next step. So I love your strategy about being there for them, because that's the whole idea. And I put that in my PowerPoints all the time. I talk about authenticity, show value, show them what you can offer. You're not just there to say, I'll buy the house and we're done. You know, you're there to say, hey, let me help you. It's not all about the house. And you're going to get the ones that they can suck a lot of time. Then you're going to get the ones that are worth it for you too. I mean, you take the good with the bad, and you're going to see that there's results. But if you're willing to buy into the long-term play of it, probates they can be amazing margins. I mean, there was one investor, I think, he bought a property last year, a probate property, and I think he paid them off. Like, I think the mortgage was $110,000, 2 heirs. I think he offered $115,000. Well, when he paid it off and he bought the house, the retail on it was $200,000. So if he really wanted to, he could have listed that and made a serious chunk of cash, but he kept it for Airbnb purposes.
Nice.
But the idea is there's so many opportunities with these properties.
Yep. All right. I want to end with one last question, because I think that this is a question we get a lot in the clubhouse room. And it keeps getting brought up, and I'm the investor, you're the lawyer here. So I know that people are going to have the same question. Is it worth reaching out to probate attorneys, marketing to probate attorneys, if I'm an investor looking for probate properties? Like, we get that question a lot in Clubhouse. Should I be marketing to probate attorneys? Should I be establishing a relationship with them? If I'm going through the courthouse research and I see the probate attorney who's working the probate case, should I market to them to see if they would, they will get their seller to contact me, or their client to contact me? What is your answer to that?
I don't think you have a right or wrong answer depending on what your agenda is. My perspective is a little different, right? Because in every one of the probates I'm usually working on, there already is a buyer, there's already a transaction. So I'm definitely out, right? So even if somebody was like, hey, I'm interested in that one. Nope, had that situation last year where I'd gotten so popular. I'm like, they call me like the Prince of Probate here in Jacksonville. And I've gotten so popular that every investor's like, oh yeah, Al. So they dropped my name, and I was like, whoa. Like, I'm out. I'm only here for the probate. So I have a different perspective on it, only because of how many probates I have that are already something that everybody's dealing with, and I just step away from it. You can't go wrong. I mean, look, if you think that there's an opportunity out there that you really want to try, the only way you're going to know is if you try it and it doesn't work. I think the best avenue, because attorneys can't make the decision for the heirs at the end of the day. The decision makers are the heirs. The decision makers are the personal representative, if there is one. Remember, it doesn't always have to be one. It could just be all the bennies. But at the end of the day, you want to go to the people that make the decision, and attorneys don't make the decision. They're there to facilitate the probate. That's something that's come up too about, like, what's the lawyer's role? It's to facilitate the probate. It's not to like impede the probate, you know? So I think that's the best avenues. You know, when you go through your court file or you do your skip tracing, those are the people that make the decisions and the choices in the probate estate. And I know we have talked about this, and I do listen. I know you've talked about, say, hey, you know, there's ideas with gift baskets and reaching out, you know, building relationships. The problem is, and I'm just saying it because I know I am, I'm very different. I'm unique. I respond to people. I email people back. I'm proactive, not reactive. And a lot of the profession is the other way around. They're reactive. They don't respond. They don't call people back. And that's what makes it a bad name. And I just think that you could be also wasting time and energy on doing it. But again, you don't know until you try and you learn for yourself what it's like. But my perspective, I lean more towards I wouldn't versus I would. But on my end, it's because I have all of these probates that are already in a situation.
Yeah, I share the same perspective. So my perspective is I'm focused on contacting the personal representative or the petitioner or the heirs, whoever is going to be inheriting this house, because I want to deal directly with them, because they are the ones that are deciding to sell the house, not the lawyer. They are ultimately the ones that are going to decide on the purchase price, not the lawyer. And so that's number one, is I'm going to focus on finding out who it is that's going to be inheriting this house. Number two, like you said, probate lawyers are really just there to facilitate the process. They're not supposed to be there giving them business decisions on who they should sell it to and what they should sell it for. And it's crazy, Al, because I have had attorneys get in the way where the buyers came back to me and they're like, well, you know, my attorney thinks I shouldn't be selling it at this price. And I was like, well, but it's really up to you. That's your decision. And I'm not going to move forward with you if you don't feel comfortable. But this is what we agreed upon. And the probate attorney's there really just to facilitate the probate. But it can happen, right? Once in a while. Number three, if you want to establish relationships with probate attorneys and not specifically reach out to attorneys about a specific property, that's where I would focus my attention on. So, you know, one example is, hi, Al, I saw that you're doing a probate on 123 Main Street. You know, I would be interested in purchasing that property. That's not something I would do because, again, that's not your decision. And you're really focused on helping your client get through the probate, not sell it. What I would do instead is, hey, Al, here's this little gift basket. I just wanted to tell you about myself. I'm a real estate investor in town. We actually buy a lot of properties from sellers who are going through probate. You know, sometimes sellers call me and they haven't even started the probate yet, and they have no idea where to go to. And I would just love a referral for me to be able to send them to a probate attorney who they can who I like, know, and trust, and who I know can get it done for them. And so I just wanted to drop off my information here and see if you would be interested in me possibly sending you potential clients who need to go through the probate in order for me to buy the house from them. Right now, I'm adding value to you, and you're going to say, well, yeah, sure. I'll totally be a referral source. If you've got anyone that needs to go through probate, I'm your guy, send them my way. And now I've established a relationship with you because I'm adding value. I'm not just asking you about a house that you're probating and, hey, can you get the sellers to give me a call?
And when you take the approach of being able to help them and point them in the right direction, because at the end of the day, you know somebody that's going to be able to either structure it differently and wait until the end where they don't have to pay anything up front. Well, the cost is very important that they pay, or the investor could if they consent to it, you know. But at the end of the day, when they know, wait a second, can I do this thing with the least effort and I don't have to pay $5,000 for attorney's fees. I don't have to do it. I could just, let's get this done. It's so comforting to know for them that we can do this probate, it will get done, and at the end of the day, there's a pot of gold from the property and the sale of the property. It helps them know that. And like you're saying before, Carrie, this whole thing about the lawyer impeding on this probate estate stuff, I can't answer for that, because my style is, let's get in, let's get out, let's get done, right? Like I've been like that on Clubhouse. I think I've been pretty vocal about that. You want to get things moving. You want to be efficient and figure out a solution to this. I've talked about it with many investors about, look, you don't want a situation where it's dragging and dragging and dragging. So, I mean, you don't want that. And I have one right now where the county is just taking so long to get back to me about something. And I got to a point where I was like, wait a second. If I do an email back and I respond, am I going to wait another 2 to 3 weeks for a response and another question? So I'm that style to say, I don't think so. We're going to set it for hearing. We're going to get it. We're going to hear it from the judge. Let's find out what's going on. I don't like dilly-dallying. I just am that style. And I learned that by being an entrepreneur and a business mind about, I want to get things done. I'm not here to be that typical lawyer. And there are times when the estate can be complicated, no doubts. Yep. It can be complicated with a lot of issues. I mean, we had one, it was a nightmare last year. And sure, is it going to be a flat fee? Not at all. It'll be billable time, but still the same idea. Even though it's going to be more expensive, what do we do to get this done? And they're going to have to take the hit later, but we can get this done. It's a matter of how much and how long and what's the timing. But you got to think, let's do this thing.
Let's just do it.
Let's do it.
Just do it. I like it. All right. So Al, if someone has a probate seller or they have some probate questions, where is the best place to reach you?
So I definitely love how people do reach out to me on the Facebook Messenger. I have my new business page. So you can find me on Facebook, Al Nicoletti, and then you can find me on my business page, the Facebook business page under Al Nicoletti. I've been a lot better about knowing that there's 2 inboxes now on Messenger. So you can definitely message me through there. You can also reach out to me at the law firm. I guess I could put the contact in there. The law firm number is the 904-246-9994. You can reach me there. There's an email. But preferably, what I've realized, the best way to get me is through the social media pages. You can also find me on Instagram. I think it's at Attorney Nicoletti for Instagram purposes, where I'm posting all the micro content. And finding me on YouTube, under my YouTube channel, Al Nicoletti. And that's the best way to find me and reach out to me.
Well, I'm going to put that up here right now. It's at Attorney Nicoletti for your Instagram.
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. This was so great. I'm going to have to go back and take some notes. Gosh, I learned a lot.
And we could talk about, look, Harry, when it comes to this niche, it's only just starting. So for everybody watching, when you're watching this right now, you're witnessing the beginning of an era in Florida where now you also have people from California and New York coming, buying up properties. And at the end of the day, there is always a changing of the guard in a family at some point. And there's property out there, there's land out there. So for Florida, it's just beginning in this probate niche. And believe it or not, we didn't even get the stats, but by 2037, a third of the inventory in Florida is going to be probate somehow related. Wow. So if you're watching and you're seeing this, you're getting in the game now. And there's so many parts to this, Carrie. That's why I said I'm probably the only probate attorney that can talk about probate to death and liven it up more than anybody.
Well, this is why I love you, and I wanted you to come on because you seriously are the coolest probate attorney I have ever met. I just appreciate you coming on, sharing all this stuff with the listeners. And you guys, it doesn't stop here. Please make sure that you're following Al on his Instagram, on his Facebook, and take advantage of the fact that he's getting out there and producing this education for you. Like we said, you don't have to know it all, but the more you know, the more effective you're going to be as a real estate investor if you're dealing with probate sellers. So it's you just got to get out there and start learning more.
And just do it. I get a question a lot, Carrie. It's like, how do I get started in probate real estate? Just like anything, start it, do it, right? Get going with it and learn from your experience as you go. You can't over prepare. If you over prepare, then that may shy you away because now you're reading the books and you're reading the WebMD online stuff and it's like not good. You just got to do it and learn from the experience and learn from mistakes of others. Call people, call these seasoned investors like Carrie. Call them because if they've been through these situations, they can help figure out, what do you do here? Oh, war stories. What happens in this situation? What do we do? It always helps because people have stories. People have experiences and backgrounds, and they are willing to share. Just reach out.
Yeah, you know who I was thinking about coming on here was Brett McCullum, just to like swap stories, because I'm sure he's got some good ones too.
Oh man, Brett McCullum is the king of the small market. And Brett, he has a mind to him where he's like, I'm going to figure this out, because small markets are really different than larger markets like Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville. You have people that have been there for generations or people that have never been contacted before. But Brett brings that same approach you have, Carrie. He cares about the situation, cares about the people. I think there's been deals where Brett's taken the hit on the assignment fee because he cares about the person and the situation and he wants to help others. And I know when he does it and he has that mentality, he knows he succeeds and he does succeed at it. It's just brilliant when you can conquer small markets. It's amazing.
Yeah, I feel like everyone always thinks you got to go out to the bigger markets because but you're right, especially with probate too. Going out to the smaller markets might be more profitable, more effective, and you can dominate a small market. And there's a lot of small markets here in Florida. You threw out some county I'd never even heard of the other day.
Lake County, Sumter County, Seminole County.
Washington, you said? Washington County? I'm like,
Washington County was unique. I had that probate, and actually when I did that, when I sent the court orders in, the judge signed it in 20 minutes. Hernando County was the fastest. I did it in 2 hours. But Hernando, there you go.
Yeah.
Nothing's really happening there. I don't know if anybody's reached out, but there are investors that tackle small markets. And the difference is the volume is not so high there. So less competition, but hey, it's an opportunity.
Absolutely.
Your wheels are turning.
I know. I'm like, I'm gonna go research all the small markets in Florida because I can't remember how many counties we have, but I looked at it the other day and I was shocked at how many counties are in Florida. And like, I would say a fourth of them I had never heard of before. So now I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go research this.
I think I even picked up one in Levy County, and it was like, Levy County, how many counties in there a year? It's like 20? I don't know. But no matter what small or large market you in, I don't know if it's going up this way or down, but the trajectory is going up. So there's going to be more. There's going to be more Osceola. There's going to be more in Orange County, everywhere.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks again, Al. We're going to have you come on again because I feel like we could just talk forever about this. We've only just touched the surface. So we're going to have to get you on here again. But definitely, guys, check Al out. Make sure you're watching all his content because if you got some value out of this, you will for sure get some value out of the webinars and the videos that he does.
Carrie, thank you so much for having me. And yes, you're right. I can't wait to do this again with you because we'll have more stories to talk about. There's going to be more things on your end, my end. And I absolutely love that you're doing the Investor Warrior Show. It's amazing. And I hope everybody got tons of value from it. And I can't wait again.
All right. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Remember, you're only one deal away.